Boy, I'm watching the video you just put on, Barry.
That's
Freddie and the Dreamers. That's the name.
Freddie and the
group?
Dreamers. Yeah, that goes back to 1965.
It looked at
and that actually was a dance craze.
What was the dance called?
It's called the Freddie.
Really?
Yes.
They're sort of flapping their arms like.
And contrary to popular rumors, it was not named after Fred Kalis. It was named after.
Oh, I'm glad. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. So.
How about that?
Freddie and the Dreamers.
That's. I really. I look forward to your pulling out some of these all this obscure music.
Well, I mean, that was actually a huge hit back in 1965.
They look like they are Beatles wannabes, right? They have that
that was
look
part of the British.
with the suits and the hair a certain way, and
1965. There was a lot of the British invasion. So you got a lot of groups from overseas at that point. So they all wanted to be Beatles.
They all wanted to be. And who doesn't, right?
Yeah, who doesn't want to be a Beatle, right? I'm a Beatle. You're a Beatle. Wouldn't you like to be a Beatle too? Well, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Holidays are over. I'm not sure. You said we got together once before so far this year.
We
2
did.
weeks into the new year.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You were on vacay last week.
I thought you were gone the week before that, though.
No. I've seen you in 2019.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So how's it going? How's your year going?
The year's going pretty well so far.
Make any big decisions yet this year or what?
Oh, here we go. No, I haven't actually.
No.
It's the big decisions are what's for lunch.
That's usually
no. That's not true. We've obviously made some big ones in the last week.
I guess so. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking about that today concerning charter schools.
Yes.
But no, we're working away on a great deal of stuff. The stuff that often consumes a good deal of my attention, which is public safety, our schools, the port, figuring out how to attract more business, all that stuff. Managing the city's finances, that's always, we're always talking about money to make sure that's being spent well. That's how my day's occupied. Yeah.
So we apparently got this deal on the Alma Del Mar.
Yes.
And it seems to fly in the face of everything that you've stated about charter schools. I mean, you don't want the charter schools because they drain.
Right. We can't afford
the local budget. You can't afford them. Yeah. This will do that to some degree, right?
To some degree, it will.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, the Alma Del Mar up in the north end had applied for. They wanted 2 campuses, right? And they wanted to add about 1,200 new seats.
That's right.
So Jeff Riley, who was the Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth, I guess on Monday came up with this plan.
Well, he proposed the plan. He's come
up with the plan. He's got a lot of steps to go before it's done. So what he's saying is, why don't we do 1 campus and we'll give you 450 new seats. The plan also includes an idea to use the former Kempton School, which has been closed down since 1991. Alma Del Mar will fix the furnace.
Well, no, Kempton's been closed down for 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Where did I get 91 from?
I have no idea.
Maybe that's when the boiler blew out. Maybe that's when I stopped doing the Freddie. I don't know. I just started paying attention to what was going on. All right, so it's been closed for a little while anyway. The boiler's broke, so the furnace or whatever. So they're going to take care of all of that.
Yep.
And under the agreement, what they would do would draw from the local neighborhood as opposed to doing a citywide lottery.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There's also something in this agreement that would allow the city of New Bedford to apply for state education grant money to help finance this and offset the local costs to this. All right, so there's a lot there. And this is going to be taken up by DESE on Monday, Department of Elementary. Tuesday. Okay, Department of Elementary. I'm glad you're here to set me straight because I'm getting all my facts right.
You're doing all right so far.
I'm doing pretty good, right? Yeah. DESE takes this up on Tuesday.
Yep.
And so if DESE approves it, we've got to get local approval from the city, from the school committee first, city council, and then the legislature
to dispose of the school. Yeah. So let me. I think that is an accurate summary of what's being proposed. So one might ask, well, you were against the expansion of charters, and I think it's and that's true, and it would be fair to say that getting 0 seats would be better than what we have. I also recognize, and every member of the school committee recognizes, and most of the folks, including the city council and the state legislators, and everybody who's been paying attention to this, recognizes that we were inevitably going to get some charter seats. And this has been an exercise in trying to establish an arrangement that would do no harm or do less harm to the city's finances, and while ensuring that kids get, in the long run, the kids at the school and everywhere in the city get a better education, right? Those are always the goals. So what was likely to happen, and still remains a backup proposal from the commissioner, is that Alma would get 594 seats, which is half of the original proposal of 1,188 seats. And that would really devastate the city financially. It would be about an $8.1 million hit to the budget upon full build out of the school. And that would be a really big imposition. 1,188 seats would have been, like I said, sort of catastrophic, honestly, and I don't use that word lightly. The reality is that we live in a state that has a charter school statute that places a huge, almost unavoidably strong presumption in favor of charter expansion. I mean, the standard is, in essence, is the school performing at better than the state average? Not is it excellent, not is it the best in its school district, is it better than the state average? And there are other things, but when you get right down to it, it's that. And then if the answer is yes, do they have a operating plan that makes sense? And if the answer to that is yes, then the question is are there seats under the charter cap that would allow this to happen, right? So there's this charter cap around the state that below which there is the charter schools can fill in effect. And the reality is that we were going to get some. So what we've tried to do is establish a smaller school, agree to a smaller school that would draw from the neighborhood instead of drawing kids from all over the city. So why would you do that? Well, one, it's a lot cheaper, right, for the city. It's a lot more affordable. So instead of $8.1 million, we've projected that it would cost about $4.1 million, about half of what we would get otherwise. So that was significant. I think that is absorbable. And one might ask, by the way, why is it cheaper? And it's cheaper because by drawing from the neighborhood, by creating a neighborhood district, you would draw classes from neighboring schools. However you draw the district, you take from nearby elementary schools and you take the students, as well as, like, frankly, you're taking whole classrooms, as opposed to a choice school where you're just taking a kid here or there and everywhere and busing them in, right? So there's no busing cost to a neighborhood school, right? So
is that fair to the rest of the families in the city, though?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay,
I'll get to that. So,
right. Don't mean to rush you. I'm just
no. I want. This stuff is so complicated, right? Yeah. So people hear the debates between charters and district schools, and it's like, it's lost on people, and it would be lost on me if I weren't in the middle of it. And so I think I think it makes sense to try to lay it all out. Ordinarily, when you have a choice school, right, as you and I have discussed, you have, as they do now, you pull a kid from, say, Pulaski in the north end and Taylor School in the south end, and the district has to pay for those kids to go to the charter school, but it doesn't get to offset the district's costs in educating those kids. So in other words, you still have the teacher that kid left, you still have the nurse, you still have the custodian, you still have the building, you still have the principal, everybody, and the costs remain the same. And that's why charters end up being choice charters end up being very expensive. Under this model, you get to offset that. The other big thing is, and this is something that has grated on public school teachers for a long time, and I very strongly sympathize with this, is that for all the claims of charter schools that they are educating the same kids. It's just not the case, right? There is a selection process. Not everybody signs up for that lottery. If you get some kid whose parents had just come over, had just immigrated to the United States, and there are language and cultural barriers, a lot of those kids don't sign up for lotteries, right? They just don't. And there are kids that are counseled out, whether it's before they actually enroll or after they enroll, and the school says, you know what, you'd probably be better off going somewhere else. I'm not making specific accusations about Alma, but charter schools in general do that. Under this model, they have to take the kids that
But
are
that goes
in the
back to my
neighborhood.
question of fairness. If some kid in the South End might want to go to that charter school but can't because they're not in that neighborhood and somebody else, but yet they're still paying for it. It's coming out of their tax dollars, but they don't have an opportunity to take advantage of that school.
Right. So, so the other school, the remaining school, will remain a choice school. Although I think that one should, personally, think that one should also be turned into a neighborhood school. Secondly, we have the school committee adopted a school choice program, which means that we adopt this, and the surrounding school districts, all of them, I think, Dartmouth certainly did, and Rochester did. There are opportunities to go to other schools for a limited number of slots. There are a number of New Bedford kids who are at Dartmouth High School now. A number of them are at Old Rochester now, and some of the other regional high schools. And of course, vocational too is another choice, right? Not for elementary students, but for high school, but nevertheless another choice. The other thing is, just to say more generally, is the choice model is unaffordable for many cities, and New Bedford is one of those cities. It's just our fiscal situation is such that we have to have the economies of scale that are associated with grouping everybody into a school district in order to educate them properly, right? If you have the inefficiency of having a constellation of independent schools, you can't combine resources to do things like wraparound services and as much sports and as much arts and all these other things and transportation, all that stuff.
But this is the argument you've been making from day one on this.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
Well, but now it seems as though you're saying, well, this is going to be okay. It's against what you want.
No, I'm saying it is a lot better than what likely would have happened to us.
Right. But the question still arises. You got some kid that lives on Stapleton Street down the South End or whatever who wants to go to this school but can't. And his parents are paying taxes and they're paying for this school, but they don't have an option to go to that school and to use it. Only people in that neighborhood get a chance to do that. I mean, it just seems unfair. It doesn't seem...
No, I mean, the answer is, you continue to improve all of the schools, and as it stacks up, Alma is in the middle of the pack in terms of performance among elementary schools in the city. I think it's 11th or 12th out of 19. So there is some really good elementary school options in the city. The city's elementary schools have made a big leap forward. There are some exceptions. There's some that are they're trailing behind the pack, but are working hard to catch up. There are others that are outstanding. If you've heard about the Congdon School, for instance, great example. A school in the South End where 50% of the kids come from families where English isn't spoken in the home, and yet they are the top-ranked elementary school in southeastern Massachusetts, according to DESE, right? So, and there are others. Rodman's another one, Pulaski.
But it still limits their options. So.
Right, but by that logic, you make everything choice, right? You just pick whichever school you go to, and then you run into the resource problem, right? When you're busing kids all around a city. And what you're essentially the logical end of your point is really a voucher system. Give everybody a voucher and you can go wherever you want. And what I'm saying is that is fiscally, even if you believed in that and didn't believe as I do in neighborhood schools, even if you believe in that, it is fiscally,
I'm
fiscally
a huge
unworkable.
believer in neighborhood schools. I think these huge they're warehouses. I grew up through the neighborhood school system.
Well, they're not warehouses. We don't try to make them warehouses.
Well, I mean, but I'm in favor of going back, taking down these big old schools and having the neighborhood schools. I think it's obviously it's not workable, but it's something that I thought was a much better education. So where this is going to be located, Kempton, you're going to be drawing kids from some of the neighborhood schools. So we're talking like Haymack and Parker.
So yet to be determined, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's got to be an open redistricting process, for that neighborhood to allow people to understand what the implications are. I would ask if if there are parents in the neighborhood, who are wondering about this. I get it, and I would say give Alma a fair hearing about whether it makes sense for your child, and if it doesn't, then there'll be options to to opt out through the school choice.
Sure.
Scenario.
But what other schools would you draw from? I mean, Haymack.
Well, so the neighboring schools include
Parker.
They include Parker's one. Haymack is not. It's Pacheco. It's just sort of doing this, counterclockwise, I guess. There's Parker. There's Pacheco. There's Brooks. There's Rodman. There's Hathaway. There's Kearney. So they're set around there. And so if you look at a map, they're not. The neighborhood zones for those schools are not, tightly, constructed, right? They're not perfect squares.
Like a congressional district after it's been gerrymandered, kind of like it.
Kind of like that. So if you looked at a map, you'd say, yeah, these look like gerrymandered districts, but they've evolved over a long period of time. So we'll make sure there's an open process here. What the bottom line for us is that, look, there is a political reality that we have to face. We have on the books in Massachusetts something that I would never have agreed to, which is a charter school statute that carries with it a heavy presumption in favor of expansion, even when the school itself may not be as good as a lot of other schools in the district itself, and that expansion gets to go forward without any regard for fiscal consequences, right? It doesn't matter if the city is, laying off firefighters and cops and others at the time. If the charter school qualifies on a very narrow grounds, the state says go do it, and that makes for bad policy.
Okay,
and that's what we're up against. And so what we've done here is something that I think, under those circumstances, is a far better alternative. It saves the city a considerable amount of money, and it puts the charter school, in this case Alma, on a level playing field with neighborhood schools. They have to take the kids in the neighborhood, and their performance will be compared apples to apples with that of all the other district schools that have to do just the same thing.
This is quite a big neighborhood, though. I mean, it's so Haymack is not on the list. You gave me 6. Parker.
Haymack is not contiguous.
Pacheco, with Brooks, Rodman, Hathaway.
Yeah, Haymack's not that far away. Haymack is about a mile away.
Okay.
If you look at the original Kempton district, which was very small, Haymack was not a contiguous district. So there would probably be a reestablishment of something that looked like the Kempton district, which was very small. Kempton itself was a one-track school, one class per grade, and what this Alma school will be a 2-track school, and it will draw from a larger geographic area. So it'll probably be Kempton plus a part of one of the other districts, one of the other zones.
So what would be the criteria for being accepted into this school? If
you live in the neighborhood,
that's simply it. There's no MCAS requirements or
none. You live in the neighborhood. And so this is why, frankly, some of the charter school proponents in Boston are going wild over this thing. Wild as in objecting, going ballistic over it, as much as you've heard from folks in the union saying we don't want any more charter schools. And I get that. And I think, that's consistent with where they've been. Some of the charter school proponents in Boston are going ballistic over this because it's it kind of calls them on their performance, right? It's you don't get to draw kids from all over the place and say, from families that have the wherewithal to enter the lottery and keep their kids in school and so forth. You've got to, they will have to take the kids from the neighborhood.
Does this help out with some of the underperforming schools in terms of lower test scores? I mean, does that help you to boost test scores at some of the underperforming schools by drawing some of the kids out of those schools?
No. The elementary schools immediately around there are doing fairly well. Parker is obviously, is right next door. Parker is a school that is recovering from a turnaround plan, and that they're moving forward, and it's actually not under the control of the school committee anymore. Parker is actually under the control of the state right now, right? It will help the rest of the kids insofar as that we are saving a lot of money that we can spend on things like facilities and school adjustment counselors and ESL teachers and a lot of other things that our kids need, right? What scared me is that, we would get 594 seats in a choice model and have a tremendous amount of resources sucked out of our school system. So what people, and this stuff, again, gets complicated, but what I think people need to know is that, I'd rather not have any because of the fiscal impact of charters, but if we're going to do it, this is a much fairer way to do charter schools. That's fair to the city, it's fair to taxpayers, and it is fair to the kids who are in district schools. So
Alma will pay to fix the heating system over there at Kennedy.
Yes.
Do they pay rent for the building once they move?
No, they would get it. The building is in. So they got the Ottawell School a few years back, which is where they are now. They ultimately knocked down the former Ottawell School. I think they paid somewhere between $250 and $300 for that school, which was on a larger property and a bigger school. The problem here at Kempton is that the boiler is gone, and that school, the building itself, is going to require a significant amount of resources just to get it up and running.
So how do they get a rent for free? Because of the investment that they got to put into it?
Yeah, they've got to put a significant amount. They're going to put more money into that school than than the thing would be assessed at anyway.
What about annual maintenance costs? Do they pick that up?
It's on them.
They pay for all of that stuff. Yeah. Now, I remember not that long ago you came in and you had a stack of paperwork here and numbers, and you gave it to me, and it's sitting somewhere on my desk.
You lost it.
But I've got it. I've got every piece of paper you ever gave me. It's just in there somewhere. It's in that filing cabinet somewhere. But you had made the point. You wanted to make the point when this whole debate was first starting to rage about additional charter schools. When people were saying, well, charter schools perform better than the local schools, and you were saying, no, they don't. Here's the numbers that show right here that our local schools are performing better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was a quote yesterday from the Pioneer Institute that was on the State House News Service wire today. The K through 8 Alma Del Mar School dramatically outperforms the New Bedford public schools, and New Bedford is the 4th lowest performing public school district in the entire Commonwealth.
Incorrect. Yeah. So I'm glad you raised that. And who printed that?
That was the Pioneer Institute.
Yes.
Speaking with the State House News Service.
So the Pioneer Institute is a group of charter school zealots, right? And I fully expect them to, say things like that. But State House News Service should have to my knowledge, they did not call our office for comment. So there you go. So if you go on the DESE website, you see that figure. The problem about 4th lowest performing, the problem with that is it's based on old data. So if you have this list, this ranking of schools, but there's no dates next to it. And then if you called DESE and said, when is this data from? It's from previous school years. It's not from the last school year when the elementary schools made this significant leap forward. So that is false. So secondly, the other thing that the Pioneer Institute asserts is that, New Bedford's under threat of state takeover. No, it's not. It's, as we've discussed, the school system was placed under state monitoring the year before I was elected in 2011, and DESE, because of the improvements that were made, removed the monitor in 2017. So
right.
If John's reminding me, this is the way it stacks up. This is DESE's most current index.
Okay.
So that's where the schools stack up in percentile ranking in DESE's current performance index. And
can you print that for me later on? So text it to me from the office when you get back. The rest of their quote, by the way, addresses just what you're speaking about here. It says that there has been persistent talk about the need for state receivership of New Bedford schools.
Yeah, according to whom, right? So that was an issue back in 2011, 2012 when I first got into office.
That was 3 superintendents ago.
That was a long time ago. Yeah. So come to think of it, it is a long time ago, right? But what I'm saying is, before I got into office, the state said we've got to place the district under monitoring. The DESE's going in the opposite direction. They removed the monitor in 2017 and said because this is a far better district than it was in 2011. So this is nonsense, and I'm very disappointed the State House News Service did not bother to call the city and for comment on this.
The other issue I had on this, and I think it's the last one I have, is the we had quite a discussion the last time you were in, or maybe it was the time before that, about spending one-time money and how you can, when you start spending one-time money for the operation of government, how you can create a structural deficit for yourself and big problems down the line.
Yeah, no, I turned on the radio on the way back to City Hall afterward, and you gave a really good summary of why that's a problem.
Yeah, people don't think about that. You got a nest egg, and let's all spend it. I mean, if you do that at home, you're going to be in trouble next month or next year.
Yeah.
So if we're relying then on state grant money to help fund this operation,
it's a minor portion of the whole. Yeah, most of
whatever grant money we use eventually dries up, right? They're usually 2-year grants, 3-year grants. They dry up, and then boom, here we are stuck with the cost of.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the grant money is not a major part of the savings.
What kind of portion of the total cost
of the roughly $4 million in savings at full build out? It's probably actually at that point it's none. So it's a legitimate $4 million in savings.
About $4 million in savings. So the state grants would cover about $4 million.
So what DESI's proposed is to give us grants going through, the first 3 years at full build out of 5 years. That is to say, after the grants go away, presumably.
Then we got to come up with $4 million, right? Which is
what I'm saying is that we have $4 million in savings, right? So under one scenario, it's $8 million, right? That's the 594 students. That's what was likely to have been proposed and as confirmed by the commissioner. Under this scenario, at 450 students at full build out, that is to say, after all the grants go away, it's about 4.1 million, so it's about half as much annualized.
But we would still have to absorb that $4.1 million.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'd rather be telling you that we're not getting any charter seats. I do. At the same time, I take the commissioner has got to make some decisions about the City on a Hill school, and that's a lot of seats. What happens to that school, I think, is up in the air. I've made my position clear that I think that school has woefully underperformed, and that those kids would be better off in the public school system, and so we'll see what he does with that as well.
If the state was adequately funding charter schools, would you be a supporter?
So my position on charters is no charters under any circumstance. It is rather that the charters can play a limited role as a incubator of new methods of teaching students, right? New methods of educating students, right? It can experiment and innovate when it comes to teaching methods or curriculum or extracurricular, whatever it is. And that was the original intent of charter schools. They became something much bigger than that over the last 20 years, where they've been seen as this way of displacing district schools. And the problem with that is, there are a number of problems with that, but the fundamental problem is a financial one. You just can't afford to do it that way.
All right. So under no circumstances you would support charter schools.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I support the original intent, right? There is
right. Okay.
But we're so far beyond that. At this point,
so under current circumstances,
we have charter schools in the city already. I'm saying, we can't afford to have more. I also am not, I wasn't born yesterday. I know that there is a political reality in this state when you have a board that is a DESI board that is filled by a governor who founded the Pioneer Institute, who is a huge charter school proponent, and that there is the charter school statute in place creates a very heavy presumption in favor of charter expansion. So the writing is on the wall, and what we've done, I think, very skillfully is to reduce the number and to do the charter in a way that is manageable for the district, and actually creates a model that will, I think, especially public school district school teachers say, you know what, I might not want any charter school seats, but doing it this way makes more sense to me, because they're going to have to play on the same playing field as the rest of us.
So the governor in his State of the State did promise to address the issue of funding for public schools and the whole formula of how the state provides aid. Folks like yourself have complained that wealthier communities are getting too much and districts like ours are not getting enough of the pie, and the whole formula needs to be reworked. This is an old argument that's gone back probably I don't know how many mayors ago. So the gogovernor's promised
not likely to end this year.
Now they were doing the Freddie back then when this started, right?
yeah,
so so the governor's promising to address this year. Are you optimistic or?
I'm glad. I'm not optimistic that the problem's going to be completely solved. I am encouraged that he is thinking about framing it the right way, which is to say that the increases should be concentrated in the state cities, right? So, one might say, every school district has funding gaps, right? But the gaps are far larger proportionally and in absolute terms in the cities around the state. It just costs more to educate kids in cities, in part because there are higher concentrations of both poverty as well as language barriers and such, and that requires more money, whether it's for special ed services or language services or other wraparound services. It just does. And to meet both not only the cities but the state's expectations about how well what we should be teaching our kids and how well, in order to satisfy those standards, we need the money to do it. And the city's ability to raise revenue is limited, and there are lots of reasons and for why that is. And we've talked about some of them before, and they go as far back as the way the borders of the city were drawn, a couple of 100 years ago, whenever that was, right? In New England, we have all these, every municipality, whether it's a city or a town, is little, right? And so you don't have the opportunity to draw from a larger property base as cities, and the rest of the country do. That's one reason, but there are lots of others. So we rely on the state for to help in that way.
Why don't we annex a few?
You can't do that in Massachusetts.
We'll just catch them by surprise some night. We'll just
invade.
We'll put the New Bedford flag out on there.
I'll leave it to you to decide which of our suburbs we should invade, Barry. I won't go there.
All right, it's 20-1 already. Can you believe that? We're going to take a break. We've got some other stuff, and we'll take your calls. 508-996-0500 is Midweek with the Mayor. We'll be right back after this on WBSM. And welcome back to the program. Mayor Mitchell is with us. It's Midweek with the Mayor. Appreciate you coming in as always. So you prepared for the weekend? I'm hearing rain right now, but I'm also hearing some people saying, you never know. It could...
No, I'm glad you bring it up because we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
It's going to snow eventually. It's January. We're hearing that we'll get some snow and then it'll turn to rain and then freeze quickly. So that's the latest. So, as usual, we just ask everybody to, stay tuned to BSM, of course, as well as notifications from the city on social media. If it does turn out to be as predicted, we might not have a plowable event. We usually don't plow until it gets to about 3 inches or so. If it gets all washed away, it'll just get washed away. But the trick here will be, as soon as the rain stops, then we have to put down product, right? The salt and the magnesium chloride to make sure that, we don't have a hockey rink for people to drive over.
Like the last time.
Well, so, sometime, but this one might be a little more predictable. The last one was just black ice. That's just very hard to predict. But so people should just keep informed, and we'll stay on top of it, and hopefully this one will just pass. But eventually, Barry, we're going to get snow.
I guess we've got a full moon, and we've got astronomical high tides, and we got the storm and everything all coming at once. So
all of it.
Yeah.
Locusts.
All at one time.
Pestilence. Yeah.
Here come the locusts. Yes. All right. So it's been a couple of weeks since I hounded you on the Ernestina wood.
Yes. And, I missed those questions.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to have to miss them anymore because they come. What's up?
So it's winding down. The emails have been generated. I think there's a little bit of double checking going on, and those emails were sent over to the district attorney's office. And I think the interviews may be close to an end, and so hopefully we'll get Sandy will be able to draft the report and wrap it up real soon. And then like I said, we'll make the report available to the public. We'll make we'll throw the doors open to it. And of course, the DA will have the opportunity to take a look at it. We want to make sure we get. The goal here is to get to the bottom of it, to let people know what happened, and then it's to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And we've talked about the city's storage of the property of others, and we'll be looking at those policies. It's a little more. There isn't a policy in place for storing the stuff of others. In this case, it was the Ernestinas. There are other examples that we've talked about. The easy thing to say is that we're never going to do that anymore. But then you start to get into the details of, well, what about all the artwork in City Hall that's been donated on a temporary basis? Do we want to say no? You can't put up others' artwork anymore. Well, so it starts. So we're going to come up with a policy and work closely with our city solicitor's office to make sure we get it right, and that there's that property is well taken care of, it's accounted for, and that the city isn't exposed to any liability for storing stuff. And so that has to get squared away, and we will make sure that happens.
How closely have you been following the information that's been collected? You just hand it off to her and say, you do this, and or have you been following
so my primary job is to ask, she controls the report. That's for her. And I told her, you could send it all over to the district attorney's office as you're getting it, so that they can have it, so people don't think that like this is just an exercise controlled by me, right? I want there to be a fair vetting of the facts. I have asked her to make sure that certain questions are answered, right? So a lot of them have come up. Some of them have come personally from you. Some have come from others at the radio station. Some have come from just people, just raising them. We want to make sure that there is as thorough of a recitation of the facts as possible.
Has anybody been able to place a value on that wood at this point that you are aware of?
I don't think anybody will know, right? Because it's the wood. Its usability is based on the condition of the wood. So if there's rotting, then obviously, like any other object made of wood, it would be worth less. And secondly, its millability would have mattered, right? So if you have wood that contains lots of nails and metal, then milling it becomes a lot more complicated. I'm no expert here, but my understanding is that in order to mill wood that has metal in it, you risk because of a risk of ruining a mill saw, sometimes they have to be x-rayed. Sometimes there are other steps that have to be undertaken to actually turn it into something usable, and that there's a cost that comes.
Well, there was an appraiser that was hired by the state or sent down here by the state at least twice that I'm aware of to appraise the value of the wood, and was there about a month before it was given away.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So,
I'm sure it'll come out in the report.
Yeah. Do you know if that person has been interviewed by Sandy at this point?
I know she's interviewed somebody from DCR about a wood inspection, and I don't know if you got the person's name, I'll make sure that she talks to that person.
I don't have it, but I can get it to you and send it to John.
Sure.
I don't have it with me right now. It's on my desk with all that other stuff.
I'm sure she has, but look, if and I've said this to to Ken Pittman and to others, if you have information that would be useful, then please, by all means,
has she interviewed Ken?
I believe she has. Yeah.
Then I'm sure she's got the name because Ken has actually spoken to this person.
Yeah. So I'm not positive, but if he provided the name, then I'm sure has followed up.
When would you expect her report to be complete?
As soon as she's done. I wanted her to have the opportunity to be thorough about it. As I said, they've largely done the email search, which using very broad search terms that yielded over 1 million emails, and so those have been culled down to the ones that are at all relevant, and they've been turned over to the DA's office. I think they're doing a double check now just to make sure they have everything, and those are getting sent over. And so she's finishing up the interviews and the report. I'm sure will be done fairly promptly. I don't want to give a date because I don't want to feel like I'm rushing her. We want to do it expeditiously, but not
hurry up
and not in a rushed fashion.
So do we get a copy of that when it's complete, or do we have to wait a while, or we get?
No, you can have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
you can have it.
I can have it. I want it.
Yes.
All right, let me take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll take some calls for the mayor, 508-996-0500, I promise, right after the break, so stay with us. All right, welcome back. 12:52 is our time. We're going to get right to the phones. 508-996-0500. Thank you for hanging on. You're next with the mayor. Go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
My question concerns charter schools.
Yep.
The expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, During the negotiations for the expansion of the charter schools, why wasn't the Coalition to Save Our Schools or the Teachers Association invited to the table?
Well, the school committee was apprised of the negotiations and the status of the negotiations. And, like any other negotiations, I mean, you have to do it in a way that's logistically workable, right? I mean, it's the positions of folks were well known at the time and taken into consideration. And I think my position was very well known, which is, we can't afford more seats, but, that ran up against the reality of what was likely to happen, which is the granting of a fairly large charter school that would draw kids from all across the city. So, my job is to make sure that the city can pay its bills and at the same time educate its students, among other things. And I think under the circumstances, this was, or the best balancing that we could do. I would have preferred zero, as probably you would, but under the circumstances, this is a far better outcome.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because you stated earlier in your discussion with Barry that you wanted the people informed. So the Coalition to Save Our Schools, parents and students, shouldn't they have a seat at that table?
Their views were well taken into consideration. They made them very clear during the event that the organization held, and as was the views of the members of the school committee, and we knew exactly where the union was, which is where they've consistently been, which is no new charter schools. So what I'm saying to you is, if we said no to this, then we would be paying an awful lot more for a charter school that we'd have no say over. Understand that we as much as we might protest, we might and complain and raise strong arguments against it. We have a state law that puts a thumb on the scale in favor of charter schools, even when the charter school isn't outperforming the majority of district schools, and even when the financial impact would be significant to the city.
So basically, we have no choice.
Okay. So this was this was better than other cities would have done, honestly, and I think you'll get other mayors around the state who will say, you know what, if you're going to do a charter school in my city, I know I don't have much say over it, but I want to do it exactly the way New Bedford did it.
All right, we got some other things. Thank you for the call, my friend. I appreciate it. And we can talk more about this in the next hour. The Captain Jack Peterson Dog Park, new and renewed applications for 2019.
Yep, people should sign up. They have to renew their applications. The dog park has gone well. It hasn't been as well utilized as we had hoped and maybe that's weather dependent. Maybe some people aren't aware of it, so we want to continue to put the word out. We are going to take a step this year, which is to allow non-residents to use it. Watch your step.
Yes.
Non-residents will be able to use it for a higher fee, right? Because obviously city residents, funded through their taxes. So for non-residents, there will be a higher fee, but if people from the surrounding towns want to come in and use it, then they should go to the city clerk's office, just as our residents do who use the park.
Do you think
it's the same idea with the beaches? It's a similar arrangement that we have with the beaches in the summertime.
So it's $25 annually for city residents. Non-residents are able to apply for $35 annually. So do you think the fee is a non-starter though? When people say I can take a walk on top of the hurricane deck and have my dog poop there and not pay anything?
Well, they're not supposed to do that.
No,
right?
But they're doing it, right?
I think it's gotten better.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with it. I hope we don't get to the point where we actually have to prohibit dogs from going up there, but people just have to be responsible.
But do you think the fee is an impediment to people using the Captain Jack Peterson?
I don't think so. We haven't heard that because most dog parks have, or at least most cities have fees associated with them because it's there's gated access and so forth. There are some things that other parks lack, right? To controlled access, exclusivity, and so forth.
Coach Carlin Lynch passed this week. Jim Phillips wrote a nice piece on the WBSM website about it today.
Yeah, great man, and terrific football coach, but just somebody who got the most out of his players, and made them not only better players but better men, and he always maintained that football was an important teaching tool for a powerful teaching tool for life, and I think he was right about that, and he's going to be missed by a lot of people.
Did he ever coach you? Did you ever play for him in any?
I did.
For which Stang?
No. I went to Dartmouth High.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before he went over to Stang, he went from Dartmouth to Stang, right? Or was it the other way? No, he went from Stang to Dartmouth. That's what it was.
No, he coached Stang. He coached Stang in the '60s, and then was at Dartmouth High for about 25 years. And
okay.
So, yeah. Though I played for him, and remember
JV
that well.
Team?
No.
No,
I played varsity. Thank you very much.
So were you good? You're a tall, thin guy. I mean, what'd you do? What position did you play? Were you the starting quarterback?
No, I was a defensive end. I played in high school. I played 1 year in college, and before my shoulder gave out. Yeah.
So did you have the girls all over you and everything? Is it true? Football. I was never a football player. I'm flat-footed, blind, and deaf, so nobody wanted me to play for.
No, look. I mean, I was. I really loved playing football, and like a lot of other football players, you get injured to a point where you have to sort of stop playing, and that happened after playing in college for 1 year.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's
we'll have to read the autobiography on that at some point.
Yeah.
Hey, we're out of time. I can't believe the
just
hour
like
so
that.
Quickly. Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. There you go. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Actually, next week I'm going to be in Washington at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting. So
maybe we can do a live from there or something.
I could call in.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go down and we'll do the show live from the Capitol or something.
Sounds good. Let's do that.
All right. We'll see you later on.
All right.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, John. All right. We're going to break for the news. We'll come back on the other side with your calls on that and a whole bunch of other stuff too, right here at 1420 WBSM New Bedford. We'll be back.